In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where we have to come up with signature drinks to temper down how sad we are about the stories that we're about to tell you. I'm Farz, joined here by Taylor, and every week we'll be bringing you two tales, one historic and one true crime, related to relationships that were doomed to fail. What's our signature drink this week, Taylor?
So thank you, Farz. So today our alcoholic drink is a Mai Tai. What is in a Mai Tai, Farz? It's like it sounds tropical. Papaya?
It is tropical. So Mai Tai typically contains aged agricole, whatever that is.
Cool.
Rum, Creole shroom lime. Yeah, I'm reading off of a very, very old and outdated Mai Tai recipe. So
I'm thinking rum. I feel like a pina colada-ish kind of thing.
A happy drink. It's a happy drink for a very unhappy story.
Okay. And then for our non-alcoholic drink, we'll be drinking just the colors of the wind. So just stand outside and let the wind hit you. That is our non-alcoholic drink. Farz, do you want to tell us who you're talking about, and then I'll go into mine?
I am going to be discussing the Anthony Todt family murders.
Very excited. I'm drinking my White Claw. I'm very excited because I don't know what that is. I haven't heard that before. Before we get there, I'm going to talk about the tragic story of Pocahontas and her husband, John Rolfe, which is a relationship that ultimately led to her death at a very, very young age. So,
Taylor, you don't know this yet, but our stories have a very unusual overlap.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Which I'll disclose to you after I get to my story. But yes, very interesting that you picked Pocahontas.
Cool. Okay, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Because I don't know, that's cool. It's like we planned it. So I got some of this information from the internet, nps.gov, Smithsonian Magazine, History Channel, and I listened to the podcast, A Short History of Pocahontas as well. So I also listened to our first episode, and I want to try to say less. So I'm going to work on that. That's my growth edge in this episode. I wanted to do for something Texan because we're in Texas together, and usually I'm in California and you're in Texas, but we're in the same house, even though we're in different rooms, and I'm super excited that we're together. So last minute, I decided to look up Stephen F. Austin and see if he had any relationship stuff, but he was just a piece of shit who wasn't married. And I just someday maybe I'll talk about the history of Texas, but the history of Texas is a history of white people who wanted to leave America so they could have slaves, and Mexico being like, absolutely not, you cannot have slaves here, and white people fighting to have slaves. So every town named after a white man in Texas is named after a piece of shit.
Lovely.
The things that Stephen F. Austin said about slaves and slavery and enslaved people are disgusting. He was a bad guy and he died young without any love. So at least
and that was our 2-minute Texas history lesson as we discussed Pocahontas today.
So then I was thinking about colonizers. So I wanted to talk about the most famous woman indigenous to North America, and that's Pocahontas. And we'll talk about her and her second husband, John Rolfe, who was totally complicit in her death because he took a person to Europe who had never been there. And so we know that that's obviously going to kill someone of some disease. So for Pocahontas, this is a bananas time to be alive. She's born into a world that's dramatically different from the one that she dies in. And far as I want you to stop me and to stop at points to think about, what was she thinking? Was she happy as things are changing and things are going crazy in her world? Was she excited? What would it have been like for a person sort of watching this alien civilization come in and try to take over? So this is this time and every time before, now, you didn't know about what was going on in the rest of the world. So people you've never seen before could walk into your neighborhood and be like, hello, we're here to we're the Mongols, we're here to colonize you, we're the Romans, we're the blah blah blah, and you've never seen them before and you don't have any idea how big the world is. So I think that's crazy.
I think the expectation when if you were alive at that point is that you and anybody you know can die at any point in time by anybody, and you have no idea, like to your point, how big the world is and who could show up at your doorstep and say, now we own you.
Um,
Terrifying.
Terrifying, just absolutely crazy. So just imagine if like aliens came down today and they started to try to learn our language and that was all happening. That's pretty much the same thing that was happening to Pocahontas. So she was born around 1596, and her name, a couple different names that she may have had, and oh my God, I apologize to the indigenous people of the United States of America and everywhere in the world for the way I'm going to pronounce some of these things in this episode. But she was born Meotoka or Amonute. So those names. So Pocahontas is sort of her nickname, and it means like playful little fun thing. So that's her like cute nickname she got when she was a kid. Her dad was Chief Powhatan of the Powhatan Nation, which is part of the Algonquin Nation, and all over like they were in Virginia and that part of America. And she was born to one of his many wives. So he had several wives, and there's not really a lot of information about her mother. So she may have died in childbirth, but she was like one of 26 siblings to her dad, Chief Powhatan. So
26 siblings.
yeah, but it's different ladies, so hopefully nobody had like 20 of them or something, but
That'd
yeah,
be a rough
there's a
couple
lot
of
of them.
years.
But it's kind of like a communal living kind of thing. So she just kind of goes back to the village where her mom lived, and then the dad goes around to other villages and has his other families there. So like good for him. He gets to move around. And the legend is that she was her father's favorite, but like I feel like we made that up because of how we want to put her into our history. But they said that she was her dad's favorite. And it was nice. Like it was kind of a war-torn place. Like they were always trying to conquer other villages and like expand their areas, but it was fine. And everyone worked all the time, but there was a lot of music, and the women learned how to build houses and do the gathering. So women actually had a really like not a terrible place in the society. They had jobs, and they were able to choose who they married, and they could get divorced. So divorce was like very popular, not popular, but like common, because they wouldn't want like no one wants that couple who's fighting all the time living in town. It was just
I,
like,
I
God, just
feel I
separate.
feel like that was a pointed dig at me.
It was not. I'm just saying that, like, if you're not having a good time, get divorced. It's fine. So
Amen.
don't kill your spouse. This is a big rule that a big thing that we'll come back to over and over again. But so that's all allowed. So it's a pretty, it's a decent life. People didn't really wear a lot of clothes. It was still pretty like primitive, but they were expanding and all of that. So all of a sudden these ships start coming in to do reconnaissance. So this is the like imagine the ship coming down from space moment, and people come out and kind of look around and then go back. So they know that there's something else out there and there's something else coming, but they don't know much about them yet. And this is happening when she's a little girl. So all of a sudden, a ship comes and they stay. And the one that stays creates a colony, and it's Jamestown. So, what do you, Farz, as a person who grew up in America, know about Jamestown on the spot?
Yeah. So I'm trying to go back. That's the town that Lucy's character on I Love Lucy is from. She's from Jamestown in the show.
Is it really? Oh my God, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
it really is. She was Lucy McGillicuddy then. But I also vaguely remember that was one of the first colonies that was settled in the U.S. It's not Roanoke. It's not the one. It was not
No,
the crazy one where people just disappeared overnight. But it was like it was. I feel like
it's
it's
the same
somewhat
time.
related. Same
Yeah,
timeline. Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. That's mostly what I know about it.
Perfect. Yes. So yeah, Roanoke was the one where they like disappeared, but probably just went out to get food and became part of the tribes. But yeah, Jamestown's the same time, the same type of people. They came from England. They came in 1607. So remember, Pocahontas was born in 1596, so she's like almost 10 or 10. And they found this land in this area, and they were like, oh, it's a peninsula. It can be protected. This is a great place to like build a fort and put up walls and do all these things. And the reason that the Powhatans didn't live there is because it was a bad place to live. It could be defended, but the land was terrible. There were tons of bugs. You couldn't drink the water, and it was just a terrible place to build a town. And
Taylor, can I interrupt you real quick?
of course,
Are you saying how do you spell Powhatan?
Oh, great question, because I had to look up how to pronounce it. I'm saying Powhatan. And the way I wrote it after looking it up is Powhatan.
Do you know what that word means in the native language?
No, do you?
No.
And
I'm
what do you
I'm
say?
I'm derailing for no reason. The reason I
No,
asked
I'm
is
super.
because there's a
I didn't say.
tribe in Brazil that's called Powhatan
Oh,
that is a it's like it's a warrior tribe basically, and I've recently learned about this, and that's why I brought it up because I was like, is there potential like maybe like some people left the Americas and went down south, or I don't know. I just thought maybe they're tangentially related, but probably not.
no, they totally could be because it was so the Powhatan's a part of the Virginia Algonquin. Now I went to Wikipedia to look at this. But they also, that was also like the name of Pocahontas's dad and the name of the language. So it's like a word that's used for a lot of different things. So I think it's possible. Some survivors relocated elsewhere, but I think it's mostly North America.
I'll stop derailing.
Okay. I mean, we could look it up later.
And then
It's
edit it in, and
possible.
then no, and
Shit, I
then
don't
all
know.
this goes away, and nobody knows that we had this conversation. I love
No,
that.
no, this is perfect. Keep it in. So I lost where I was. Okay. So the colonizers are in Jamestown and it sucks. There's no way to get food. There's nowhere to get water. People are dying. There's like the rumor is obviously that they resorted to eating each other because they were starving. Like two-thirds of them died before they got any help. So it's a terrible time to be a colonizer. They're only on this little peninsula and things are really bad. So they thought that they would be able to offer goods to the Powhatan for food. So it'd be like, oh, I have this jacket or whatever and like try to trade it for food. But there actually isn't any extra food because it was a bad time for them also. So it was just like a shitty crop year or whatever. And they didn't really have extra food. So they weren't like full on like hunter gatherers. They did do some growing crops and that sort of thing, but they rotated their crops, which is something that like I like to yell about in other places as well, because a lot of white people came to America and they were like, looked at the indigenous people and they were like, you guys are so dumb. You could be growing so much more if you just planted all the land, ignoring the fact that for thousands of years, these people have been rotating their crops to make sure the land is good. So of course, that leads to things like the Dust Bowl and things in like America that when all the land like goes to shit because white people weren't paying attention to the way people have been doing it for thousands of years.
So crop rotation is essentially let the land rest,
Mhm.
let half the land rest, plant in the other half, and then
Mhm.
when that's done, let that rest and plant the other half.
Exactly,
Cool.
exactly. And so, like in Oklahoma, when the Dust Bowl happened, what had happened was all of the native grasses that would grow on the land during the rotation time stopped growing, and that held the land together. And then it was just like dust and sand. So that's why like it was uninhabitable after a couple of years.
Taylor, again, sidetracking here at my old house in LA. You know how we had that backyard and there was just like grass, it was just overrun in the backyard and it sloped all the
Hmm.
way down. I
Hmm.
hired someone to mow that grass and I was out of town and my ex sent me a picture of what they had done when she saw it. Hours later, they'd ripped out all the grass. Like there was nothing there but just dirt. And I immediately thought of the Dust Bowl and was like, holy shit, the entire side of this hill is going to go crashing down. Luckily, I didn't, but that was my first inclination when I saw that.
No, totally. Time will tell of the next earthquake how that house goes. Yeah, exactly. You can't rip everything out by the roots and expect it to be the same stable place. Totally. Um, so anyway, so there's not enough food for them, so they're not sharing it with the people in Jamestown, and also the people in Jamestown owe money back to England because they like borrowed money to come out to the New World. So they're supposed to be bringing things back to England, and they're not because they don't have anything. So they're stuck in their I wrote, now they're stuck in their fort because they're assholes and they keep leaving and trying to steal things because they can't get anything by trade or by like normal means. And so they're trying to make a pact and they can't figure it out. And things are super tense because obviously, like, even though the colonizers have less people and they're all super sick, they also have like guns. And so a little bit more intense military power than the Powhatans have. So that balance is still not like fair. Um, so one thing they did that I think was actually really cool is they sent kids to each other's like villages to learn the language, which totally makes sense. Because like if you sent me to a Powhatan village, I'd be like, I don't know what to do. But if you sent like a 3-year-old who's already learning language to that place, they'd be able to learn it a lot easier, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So the English sent a boy, one of the boys, his name was Thomas Savage, and he moved in and learned the language. And they said, and one thing I read, it said that Pocahontas was sent to Jamestown to learn English, but and everything else, they always sent boys. So I don't know if they really would have sent her, but whatever. Either way, she learned how to speak English. So it starts with the kids, and the kids learn how to speak English. Just like now, if someone moves to America, usually the kids learn how to speak English like before the parents do.
Nice.
So who is the person that you would think that Pocahontas was married to?
The blonde, long-haired dude in that movie.
Yes. Do you remember his name?
It had to be John Smith, right?
It's John Smith. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So John Smith is one of a number of colonizers, and he goes out to in this like old group to find supplies. Like they said he literally drew the short straw and goes out there, and everyone in his group gets killed, and then they're like about to kill him, and Pocahontas like jumps in front of him and says, "No, don't kill him. Let's be peaceful and nice," which is probably not true. And she was 10, and when this happened. And John Smith then later writes a book and says, she jumped in front of them and she wouldn't let them kill me. And then we totally fell in love. And you're like, ew, she's 10. And then later he's like, oh, no, she was 13, which is still gross.
I mean,
and
it's not that much better.
No, but neither of those things happened. Like they did not fall in love at any point. And like, who knows if she actually really saved him, but he does survive. And now like he's like talked about her and he romanticizes his relationship with her his whole life. Like not like sexually romanticizes them the whole time, but is very much like this is like showing people that like the savages have humanity and blah blah blah. He like talks about her a lot and really like exploits their relationship.
To what benefit?
To like sell books, honestly, for him to go back and like sell books about his time in the colonies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Common thread between our stories number 2. I'll point that out to you later.
Oh my God, excited. So none of that's true, but whatever. She did meet John Smith. And then she starts to, she's actually is growing up. She does become like a teenager. And in this time, you can actually picture her a lot like the movie, like the clothes that a young woman would wear. Like the cartoon, the young woman would wear is like that one shoulder dress. I don't know if you remember. And she started to get tattoos and like that kind of thing. Like, she's starting to kind of grow up. And then for a couple years, she's kind of off the map. But I feel like, did you watch the cartoon? I feel like I should have prepped you and had you watch this cartoon before we started.
I haven't seen it in so many years that I might as well have not seen it by this point.
Okay. So there's a whole part of her song in the cartoon where she's talking about how her dad wants her to marry this guy and she doesn't know if she wants to marry him, blah, blah, blah. And his name is Kokowam. And I think this is the biggest shocker to me in this whole freaking story is that she really was married to Kokowam, which is it like what I don't even have words because I wrote down is like that plot point in the movie is very, very stressful. And it was for me. I'm imagining for like 70 to 80% of kids who watch the movie because Kokowam is like in the Pocahontas cartoon. He is the first person that I ever saw with chest tattoos. And I was like, yes, you should marry him. What are you talking about? He was like imagine like if they did a live version of this movie, Kokowam would be Jason Momoa, and there would be a global emergency because everyone who watched the movie would get pregnant who started watching the movie.
That is solid casting. That would be really solid casting. I like that.
So that's who Kokowam is, I think, in the zeitgeist of like young people who watched Pocahontas of a certain age. But she did marry him, and all evidence is that they were in love. Like she was allowed to choose who she got to marry. He was like in the military, but not necessarily like the the best warrior or anything. It just seems that she likes him. And they get married. They may have had a daughter, but we don't really know. And then he kind of disappears out of her story. So they could have gotten divorced, which is totally fine, or he might have died. Either way, they're not married forever, but they are married when she's like a young woman and he's like a young man. So she does have a first marriage.
the way you describe him, he does seem like a risk taker. Like he would have a Harley and also not wear a helmet, you know?
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
It was probably a boar. I don't know why. I just think he like got gored by a wild boar. That feels plausible for that time.
No, I definitely think that may be true. Like he died in like a big hunting trip or doing something like super hot and heroic. It's how we're gonna
Yes.
lose Jason Momoa and how we lost Coco. Exactly. Exactly. Um, so she's, kind of living her life. She's married. She's hanging out. There's still kind of this tense thing that obviously the Jamestown people are still there, and they really, really want to make more trade and kind of do more stuff with the Powhatans. So one of her jerk friends says, "Oh, there's a new boat at the shore. We have to go see it." And she's like, "I don't want to go." And they're like, "You have to come with us." And they go. And then like her friend is like, "Oh, I really want to go on board. Come with me, meh." And so she goes and they eat like dinner. And then Pocahontas is like, "Something's weird." And of course, something's weird. Her friend sold her out and she gets kidnapped. So she's kidnapped onto this boat. They lock her in a room and are trying to like get ransom from her dad. And she's out there for a full year. She's kidnapped by the white people, and she's in Jamestown and like a town next to it. And now there's like a full-on war. Her dad kind of concedes, but like not really. So there's like a whole bunch of stuff going on. It's not great. So this is like worst case for Jamestown because they're not getting any help from the natives. They're not getting any resources, and they're trying to they're really instigating things by having Pocahontas. So she's there for a year, and guess what they try to do to her while she's there?
I mean, I can imagine.
It's not like a physical thing, a mental thing.
They make her a goddess.
No, they convert her to Christianity.
Of course, of course. It's so stupid. I mean, come on, obviously. Of course, that's the first thing you do.
Of course. So, of course, what they want to do is save the heathens, and they want to fucking save Pocahontas from, her beautiful life. And they convert her to Christianity, and they not guess what they name her. You're never gonna guess, but they name her Rebecca. And like,
Ugh.
I know. And I know a Rebecca who I like a lot. I know there are Rebeccas. It's a beautiful name, but like, come on, her name's Pocahontas. She's like this like amazing, like trailblazing woman, and you named her Rebecca and made her and baptized her. Ugh,
It's basic shit.
so basic. So now her name's Rebecca, and this is where she meets her second husband, John Rolfe. And this is where there are red flags that I will point out for you for this marriage. So she's 17, which is like old hat by now because she's already like had a baby and been married, probably had a baby. He's 27. I feel like that's maybe okay in this time. Here's what's not okay. She had to convert first to Christianity. And then he like wrote like a letter to the governor of the area that was like, "I need permission to marry this heathen. I'm so torn because she's like super hot, but also she's a heathen," essentially. You're like, fuck you, dude.
I mean, yeah, I like to think of things within the time frame in which they happen, and maybe that was like you had to do that
Yeah, that's
legally to
fair.
make it binding.
Fine.
Maybe you
Yeah,
didn't have a choice. I mean, I'd probably not call my wife a heathen, although maybe heathen had a different connotation back then than it does now.
it doesn't. No.
Okay, then that's a
Um,
bad thing to call your wife.
but so he's like, it's his second marriage as well. He's a widower and he's a tobacco farmer. He has a plantation. He may have stolen tobacco seeds from the Spanish and brought them to Virginia. So to get like the good tobacco in America, which obviously like starts a whole thing. And they're married on April 5th, 1614. And they have a son in January the next year. And then did you see this thing on the news this week about how Edward Norton is a direct descendant of hers?
Wait, I thought it was something else. Oh yeah, you're right. He is a direct descendant of her. That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's from this son that she had. So his name is Thomas Rolfe. And so from Thomas, we get Edward Norton, which is fun. Um, and so now Pocahontas is living on a goddamn tobacco plantation with other indigenous people, essentially like working the land for them. But by all accounts, she's happy. She's just like this like Christian woman on this plantation, like living in a house named Rebecca. Um, and this time is called the Peace of Pocahontas. It's 9 years of peace between the white people and the indigenous people. So this is a part where I'm like, I don't know, is she happy? Like, could she be happy? Is she like,
I mean, yeah, what is Pocahontas? What does her status have to do with there being this peace?
because she's like the favorite daughter of the chief, and she's been someone who's gone like back and forth and like met a lot of the people in Jamestown. She can communicate really well, and I think also that she was converted to Christianity is a big part of it too, because then she's like, showing that they can be saved and all these things, and then
Got
they're
it.
like, we don't want to ruffle any feathers, whether that was, I didn't mean that. That was not a pun, but they didn't want to like, do anything weird where she would get like killed. So it was just like a tense piece, but a piece. And then at the end of this time, the King of England wants to see her and wants to meet her and asks her and John to come to England. So they go, they take their son and they go to England, to London. They go to parties and balls and they concerts and they meet the king and all this stuff. And so she's really just like there. And this is where we get like the one engraving of her, and it's engraving, and we'll put it on our socials, but she, you know, is wearing like colonial garb, like the whole thing, and looks like a colonial person. It's wild. And the other crazy thing that happens while she's there is she meets John Smith again, and she thought he was dead, just like assumed he was dead because it had been like, I don't know, 10 years since she'd met him. And he's there, and there's a whole bunch of different accounts on what happens. But fucking John Smith, he writes that she was yelling at him as like a spurned lover would yell at someone, like blah, blah, blah. Other people are like, she was yelling at him because he's a piece of shit. And she was saying, you Englishmen lie to him like over and over again when she was yelling at him. But he's like, oh yeah, she's just like jealous. She still loves me, blah, 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 because he's a jerk. And another thing that people say is that she also may have tried to call him father because he had that, like, she saw him as like an older person, and he was upset about that because he told everybody that they were dating.
I'm kind of with John on this one.
That shouldn't have called him father.
No, that she probably was still into him because, like,
She was never into him.
because
John
why
Smith,
would you care so much? Like, if I went into someone that I dated like 5 years ago, I'm not gonna be. I don't care what you do, or like, why would I? Why would I have emotional attachment to that person unless I actually was still into them?
no, they did not date. She was 10 when they met, and he was a grown man. They did not date. He
Well,
told
that's true.
everybody
Was
that they dated.
she could have been 13.
Fine. He told everybody that they dated, and they did not. And then he was using that to like excuse that she was yelling at him. But I feel like she was, if anything, I would hope that she was yelling at him and being like, look what you did, you little jerk,
Yeah,
like
fair enough.
to my people. Um, but who knows? Like, we have no firsthand accounts from her and what her life was like. But her life was so short. So, she moved to a suburb of London, and it's gross. London is gross. Like, London is like there's no, again, sticky, no running water, like there's no air. Like, there's one account where she's like in a carriage and she's like holding a handkerchief over her face because she can like barely breathe because she's used to being in these beautiful forests with fresh air and fresh water and all these things. And now she's in freaking London where it's disgusting. And so she's just like not having a good time. And she finally gets to go home, and they get on a boat. She's 21 years old, and they don't even leave like the area. She dies before they even get to leave. She dies of a disease on the boat. It could be anything, like, you know, smallpox, any like diphtheria, any of those terrible diseases that you get when you're a person who hasn't been exposed to them. So she got a disease, or anyone really, because they're like everywhere. She got a disease. They take her body back to England, and she's buried in England. They said her last words were, "All must die, but 'tis enough that my child liveth." So her son Thomas stayed in England, came back to America in 1635, tried to find his Powhatan family, and he was like a little bit successful possibly, but then he moved back, and John Rolfe got married again and had another chapter of his own life with his like third wife and all of that. But Pocahontas, she at 10 years old, she allegedly saves John Smith's life, and 11 years later she's dead on a boat in England, being like converted and having all this crazy stuff happen to her.
I'm I'm a bit conflicted. Is this a sad life or not?
I don't know. And that's like the question that I want to talk about. Like, I am sad about it because I feel like that is that she was like taken advantage of because she was like kidnapped, and like had to marry this guy John because he like said he loved her, and like who knows if they really loved each other, because I don't know what she was thinking, and I have no evidence of what she was thinking. So maybe I'm an asshole and she was super excited and was like, this is exciting, I'm an explorer, like I'm out here like doing these things that like only chiefs do because I'm talking with translating and talking to governors and doing all these things, and I'm learning, and I get to go across the ocean to these lands that we didn't even know existed. So like in one case maybe she's excited, but in another case maybe she's just like really taken advantage of and exploited as being the like an example of a person that they were able to convert to their ways, and this like romanticized figure, obviously, because we talk about her all the time as like someone who bridged that gap between the two vastly different cultures. But I don't know, did she want to? How did she feel? I have no idea. I wish she would have lived longer to tell us. I think that's the real tragedy for me, is that we don't have anything from her. We just have like the what people say about her, and they needed to have this like beautiful story to have it make sense.
I get a little bit of Patty Hearst vibes.
Mm-hmm. No, that totally makes sense. Like some Stockholm syndrome, like, oh yeah, I'm like now I'm on this guy's side, and all of that, because she had to like live with them and, you know, convert to all the things that they were doing. So she probably was like, yeah, no, I don't know, maybe thinks this is better. Like this is better for the world that you're here and doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
I don't
because
know.
the parallel universe, parallel timeline is she's not kidnapped for 9 years, and she is allowed to. What a seminal moment though, that her friend
Hmm.
asked her to go check out this ship. That's crazy.
Hmm.
That's what it
Yeah.
all happened. Like that is such a great example of a fork in a road that can actually derail your path.
Right. And for by all accounts, she didn't want to go. She was like, ugh, I don't want to go. And her friend was like, please come with me. Like, I need you to translate. I really am excited. And her friend sold her out and got her kidnapped and that started a lot of things. So yeah, I know she definitely didn't want to do that. Like that's documented. So maybe she didn't want to do any of it, you know? Maybe she
Yeah,
would still want to be married to Coco. Maybe they got divorced, but maybe they got divorced and they're still friends and they can just hang out. And
they
they
could
could
remarry. I
have.
mean, they could have remarried.
They could have been married. Maybe she's someone who gets married 4 times, but 3 times of them is to Coco.
A lot of multiple marriages on our stories,
We know very little
so
about
it's
him, but I'm
plausible.
definitely pro Coco. Yeah. No, totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's. And now I see why the non-alcoholic drink is just standing outside and having the wind hit you.
Yeah. It's colors of
Because
the wind.
when I picture Pocahontas, I rightly or wrongly picture the Disney cartoon of her just standing on a rock with wind blowing her hair back.
Leaves are like around her head. Yes, that's what we're thinking when we're outside, just kind of breathing in the world, and the last time that the world felt maybe safe for a 13, 10-year-old, possibly girl.
Yeah. Wow, awesome.
Yeah,
Very cool story, Taylor. Thank you for
thank you.
sharing. That was
I'm laughing because I'm like, one thing I was like, we need more banter, and also I'm like, that was not very funny. I feel like I need to put more funny things in it. Because it's just a tragic story, but it's just interesting and yeah, it's crazy. Go
it's
ahead.
fine. I mean, they're
Tell
not
me your
all gonna be
story.
the same. Yeah. So I'm still digesting your story a little bit, but I'll go ahead and dive in. So like I mentioned, I am discussing the Todt family. Todt is spelled Todt, just in case you ever want to look it up yourself.
Do you know what that means in German?
No.
Dead.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. Tot.
Why do you
Means
know
dead.
that?
Means dead. Because I took like 8 years of German.
You know what's funny? I took Russian and I don't know any of it now.
I'm
It's so
pretty far
weird.
in Duolingo, but I also took it in college, and so
Yeah, I took it in college too, and I was like, I'm in Texas. I probably should learn Spanish, but I know I learned Russian. So
Oh,
let's get into the Toad family. So obviously, Taylor, I love true crime. I like to think that I'm aware of the more sensational stories that are out there.
hmm.
This one wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah, I've never heard it,
Legit.
and I'm really surprised because I feel like I've heard everything. So that's cool.
So I'm gonna plug a few other shows here. I stumbled on this story mostly because YouTube's algorithm just totally has me dialed in, and they recommended a channel for me called the Behavior Panel. This is a channel that is comprised of 4 body language experts who review police interviews or testimony on the witness stand. They'll pause these conversations, they'll pause these videos, and they'll assess what they're reading into that person's body language. Okay, that's the entire premise of this YouTube channel. YouTube recommended a episode of this to me called "History's Worst Liar?" Anthony Todt, with a picture of Tony. I'm going to call him Tony from here on out. That's how people refer to him, so I'm going to call him Tony. And it was a picture of Tony, and he just looked like a haunted doofus. Like, he just looked like such an idiot on this screenshot that I was like, this could be interesting. He's so hapless looking. Let's see what this guy's all about. I went down a rabbit hole. I actually think I probably scared people how deep into this I went. I would tell everyone I met about this case for a period of maybe 2 months. Like, I am positive there are women in Austin that I went on dates with, had me on their list of worst dates ever. They're probably telling their current boyfriends of this date where I'm talking about this horrible haunted crime that is just like in my brain forever now.
I can't wait. I will look around on the internet to see if there's anyone who's like, watch out for the guy who talks about this scary thing.
Yeah. Sorry to y'all if y'all are listening. Go back to this. So this story is so macabre and sinister. The one thing I would tell people listening is don't try to go inside this guy's head. You know, so much of what I love about true crime is trying to figure out, like, how could someone be this way? How could they do this? How could, like, what are the thought patterns that would lead someone to the outcomes that we see in true crime? Don't do it with this guy. It'll take you places that you don't want to go. Just trust me. Like, I went really deep with this, and I just don't want to do it again. But yeah, if you really want to go in the weeds on this, there is a 14-part series called Looking for the Todt Family. It's produced by this publication called The Day. I highly recommend it. It was incredible. I actually listened to it twice back to back. I actually didn't go back and listen to it when we started researching this because it was already ingrained in my brain, like I said before. But
Farz, are you okay?
Yeah. No, I'm totally fine. Again, like in this, when I started researching this again, I didn't go as deep as I did before because I just didn't want to. But I highly recommend The Day. It's a publication. They actually interviewed this guy. They interview his sister. They did an incredible job of a completely comprehensive take on what happened here.
Okay.
So let's get into the subjects of this topic. So there's Tony Todt. He's 47. He's the patriarch of the family. He is married to Megan, who's 42. Was 42. They had 3 children: Alec, who's 13, Tyler, who's 11, Zoe, who's 4, and they also had a dog named Breezy. I'm using past tense for a reason.
I heard that. Tell me what year we're in.
Everything transpires in 2019 or 2020.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, fairly recent.
It's like yesterday.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There isn't a ton of detail out there about Megan and Tony's past. All we know is they were high school sweethearts. They grew up together. By all accounts, it was kind of an idyllic marriage. It looked like a successful, happy marriage from the outside in. And that's unfortunately where the extent of our knowledge of their background is. There is a detail about Tony's background I'm going to go into a little bit later. I just don't actually know where to couch that in this outline, so we're going to discuss it later on. One thing to note is Megan had Lyme disease. Mm-hmm. I don't know much about Lyme disease other than from the stories I've heard, it can be an incredibly debilitating disease. Do you know anything about this?
It comes from ticks, right?
Yes, you typically get it from a tick.
Yeah, and I feel like I remember, do you remember the Real World Seattle? And
definitely not.
Okay. Well,
that is not something that's going on the hard drive forever.
There's a Real World Seattle. Oh my gosh, it was so dramatic. It was like 1993 maybe. And but I remember one of the women had Lyme disease and it was really debilitating for her. And I know people who I know people who have it, and it's definitely something that is really difficult to recover from.
Yeah.
So don't go in the woods and get eaten by a tick.
Well, I don't know if it has psychological impacts, but I put it in this because there's a part of this story that comes up a little bit later that might make it relevant that she had Lyme disease. We'll get to that. For Tony's part, Tony was a physical therapist in Colchester, Connecticut. He was apparently pretty successful and good at it, enough to at least to start his own clinic that was called Family Physical Therapy. From what I read of his patients, they were incredibly pleased with him. And again, if you listen to the Day podcast, there's so many glowing interviews of his patients that are in that. It's fantastic.
Like after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what happens, but I'm saying like after. They're like, but who's the doctor?
They went back and interviewed some of the patients, and like this guy, like one lady was like crying, saying that her kid was in constant pain, and Tony's therapy like just saved them.
Wow.
Both. Yeah, like he was apparently really good at this. But we're gonna have appetizers, okay? An appetizer of a crime. So we're gonna start with a starter crime just to get the ball rolling here.
Okay. I immediately you said that I said mozzarella sticks in my head. So
I thought about jalapeno poppers.
nice. Ooh, we should get one of those things that has a little bit of everything.
I think I know what we're doing after this. So as a starter crime to kind of whet our appetite, Tony was apparently engaged in Medicaid fraud from about 2015 to 2019. So Tony, this is going to be a theme here. Tony would overextend himself constantly, and he did it with his clinic as well. He had the best of the best equipment. In one instance, he ended up billing a patient's insurance company and Medicaid for 172 sessions that he didn't perform. So that's basically like that's how this fraud works. Is you say I did a service. You issue an invoice, you get paid for it, you didn't actually do anything. So in addition to that, he had multiple commercial loans that he had taken out. It kind of sounds like he was running a Ponzi scheme on himself, where he'd take a loan out to pay expenses in other loans, then take another loan to pay that loan. He was just Bernie Madoffing himself at this point. Like it made no sense. Like I don't even understand how desperate one could be where you don't see the writing on the wall if you continue doing this, but he did it.
I feel like this is a theme that we see a lot is like not knowing what to do with all your debt. Like the Turpins had all that credit card debt. And even like the people of Jamestown had so much debt back to England that they had to start doing kind of like weird shit to figure out how to get stuff that they needed.
We don't know how much debt Lucy was in, so we can't substantiate that.
Lucy McGillicuddy?
Yes, of course. So it's worth noting that Megan was not involved in the operations of the business at all. She sometimes worked as a physical therapist. For the most part, she was just homeschooling the kids. It's fair to assume she had no idea what was going on financially. And as far as she was concerned, she was with this great provider in Tony, who was basically taking care of everything. And again, as far as we can tell, everybody liked and respected him. So why would she dive into it? But I actually flagged this as red flag number one for me, which is be okay with inquiring into your spouse about what's going on with them professionally. I feel like maybe like this family was incredibly traditional, where the wife stays at home with the kids and homeschools, and the husband goes out and earns the bread and does all that, which is fine. But you should also have the kind of relationship where it's okay to bring the negative and the stressors of your professional life into your personal life. And so it doesn't sound like that was the case here. It sounds like there was a clear silo between Tony's professional life and his personal life, which I can't even imagine how much tension that puts on a person. I mean, we'll see how it turns out, but yeah. So keep in mind that as we're going to go through and talk about all this, that he'd already been found out by the authorities that he'd been committing this fraud. So the noose is starting to tie in. So Tony's the only person who knows what's going on here. Nobody else knows what's going on. His employees don't know what's going on. The patients don't know. Megan obviously doesn't know what's going on either. Okay, I'm going to go into a bit of a rant, Taylor.
Okay.
So in the interest of overextending, the family also rented a house in Celebration, Florida. So they had a house in Colchester. They also got a house in Celebration. Taylor, your reaction, I wrote this in the outline. I was like, what does Taylor know about this city? And you just reacted in the exact way that I was hoping you would react. So tell me what you know about the city.
I've been there. Holy shit. Okay, so I am of the opinion that like, and I hate to yuck people's yums, and I know I did that in the last episode with the sex party at the Turpin's house, but also I stand by if you're at a sex party and children are being abused, you should call the police. Also, like, People like different sex parties, that's fine. So I apologize for yucking that yum. But I do feel like it's really hard for me to not yuck the yum of Disney adults because you're a freaking adult. Like I know adults that go to Disney World by themselves. I'm like, what is wrong with you? So I mean, I know people love it, but like I just don't understand. Like I don't even want to go with my kids. But Celebration is a city in Orlando that's like a Disney town where like they made everything look perfect. Like I went there because my in-laws just live in Orlando, and we went there on Christmas to a restaurant and walked outside, and it was like fake snowing. So it's like building this idea that you live in this like idyllic, perfect Disney town with a bunch of other fucking psychopaths because everybody wants to live in a Disney town, and it's weird as shit.
Taylor, guess what the average age of a person living in Celebration is?
45.
37.
Oh,
How fucking stunted. Sorry, I'm not talking shit. If you're in
they
Celebration,
are. I know. Oh my
God love you.
God.
But how fucking stunted are you if that is the epitome of a life to you at 37 years old?
It's so weird. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously I just talked about a Disney movie and how like Cocoam was a big deal for a lot of people. So like, sure, but it's just like it's too much if we're buying a house in Celebration.
That was the overlap, by the way. Because
That
the
was it?
Pocahontas movie, the Disney movie, and then the Celebration, that's the overlap here. There's another one too. But
So I want to say
what
that
I
Jason Momoa would not live there.
nobody you'd want to socialize with would live there. Again, if you live there, God bless you.
Good luck.
But
Good
yeah,
luck.
overall, one of the grossest concepts I've ever come across. I wrote down that it is the Ben Shapiro of cities. Just, it's a case study in consumerism,
Yes.
commercialization of life, the sterilization of the human condition. Like, it's all disgusting. Like, take character and just remove it, and that's what you get with Celebration.
Oh my God. I'm like, so many people are gonna stop being my friend because they thought I was like super nice, and then they're gonna listen to this and be like, Taylor's not very nice.
Well, Taylor's honest in this situation. So yeah, to your point. So Celebration, like you said, Celebration was founded by the Walt Disney Corporation, and like we're kind of talking about here. Like you said with you, like I fucking hate Walt. Like I hate Disneyland and Disney World. The movies are great. The movies are
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm into the movies, but there's something about this town and about like the Disney culture. It just like it reminds me of like an Irish Catholic family where like the dad's a constant drunk and the kid's gay and the mom cries all the time, but they all pretend like everything's fine and normal and nobody talks about their issues at all. Like that's what Disney sounds like to me.
I mean, I guarantee you there are no therapists in Celebration.
Yeah. 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 You gotta figure out your mental health some other way there, unfortunately. But one thing I wrote here, which like is incredible. I dug this out. Did you know this, Taylor? They put speakers in the trees to make bird sounds.
In Celebration?
Yeah.
I've
Can you believe that shit?
guessed like 15 times, but I feel like it's like, what? I feel
Yeah.
like what do you are you like, ah, not like put a fucking bird feeder outside and get some birds. Peanut butter on a
Yeah.
pine cone like you do when you're a kid.
It's not
Like
perfect enough. You need to have the exact right pitch. You need to have the exact right cadence.
I'm like, so I know I told you when I was there was fake snow after when I went out of the restaurant. That was delicious. I had paella. It was really good. But I feel like I'm surprised it's not in a dome.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's not like a biosphere where it's just like it's
100%.
sunny all the time and like blah blah blah.
It's 10 square miles. Can you believe
Oh my
that?
God, it's crazy.
So anyways, yeah, like there's a part of the story which is obviously going to get incredibly dark and terrible, but it's also kind of hilarious because I just want to imagine the typical resident of Celebration and then pretending they're living in this Disney universe, and then Tony comes along and does what he does there, and it just completely just like I don't know. It's not funny, but it's also like this is the real world. Like I know you want to live in a Disneyland, but there is also a real world here.
First, I'm so sorry. Can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
Um, so we are together in your new house in Austin, and I told you as soon as I got here that I already Zillowed it, because I always will Zillow your house if you give me your address. And then I sent your address to my sister so I could tell her where I was, and she also Zillowed it immediately because that's what you do. You Zillow it. And did you Zillow their house in Celebration? How much did it cost? Do you know?
So this is when I went on that deep dive a few months ago, because the house came up for sale. I think maybe 6 months ago, give or take, and it didn't sell, obviously. The reason it came up for me because I'm on every social media group that has to do with like serial killers, and it popped up somebody saying, "Does anybody know whose house this is?" And I looked it up, and it was listed somewhere in the 400 to 500 range, whereas every other house in that area is in the 800, 900 range. It's a large house.
It's a little, maybe a murder house.
The the one of the worst parts about this is that the poor woman who owned the house that leased this house, the Todt family, she lives there now full time
Oh,
because she can't get rid of it.
oh, they didn't. Oh no,
Yeah,
they leased it from her.
they leased it. Um,
Sounds worth it.
yeah, yeah. So long story short, so the family is living in Celebration, starting in May of 2019. That's when they signed their lease. So May of 2019, they moved the family down to Florida. Tony stays in Colchester, Connecticut to see his patients and to work, and then he goes back and forth on the weekends. I'm going to start throwing out some dates here, but like I said, just know that everything we are talking about is between November 2019 and January 2020. It is that tight of a time frame, okay? So on November 21st, agents raid Tony's office. They take all his files, his computers, all that other stuff that further bolster a case against him for insurance and Medicaid fraud. This blows my mind. This investigation was apparently super chill because he was kind of just like going about living his life and doing whatever he wanted. He still go back and forth to Florida and Connecticut. The agents would ask when he could meet. He'd let them know. They didn't seem to have an especially adversarial relationship at this point. To that end, he told investigators he'd be back in Connecticut on December 4th to meet with his attorney and then continue with this investigation. It was almost like they were putting things on hold to work around his schedule, which is incredible. So investigators think, okay, cool, we got a few weeks to chill. Then obviously this upstanding man's going to come meet with us. And, you know, like, I hate going super into like the privilege thing, but this one just smacked me so hard of privilege. The fact that this guy bilked the government out of tens or potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. The government is like, well, have a great holiday. We'll see you, you know,
Yeah.
whenever it's good for you.
When are you free, sir? Yeah.
So weird. So the next day is the last day anybody sees Tony. That's November 22nd. So that's Thanksgiving, and he is with his sister. No clue if the rest of the family is there, if they're still in Florida. All we know is that Tony was for sure there. The sister hears from the family periodically, and it was normal interactions with them until around December 23rd, 24th. That's when all communication stopped in a way that for her sounded unusual to the kind of relationship she had with them. On the 29th, she gets vibes. She calls the cops to do a welfare check. The family also owned another condo about an hour away from this rental house in Celebration. Again, super overextended.
Mm-hmm.
She asked the police to go check there and to check the house in Celebration for the welfare check. Tony, in one of his earlier communications to her, had told her that the entire family was super sick. That's why nobody was talking to her, basically. So police went to check, and again, they're super chill. They knocked on the door. They didn't see anything suspect. They're like, nah, it's all good. We can't really do anything else for you here. That was the way they ended it on the 29th of December.
So that's like a week after Thanksgiving. She's like, I haven't heard from him.
No, she stopped hearing from him December 23rd, 24th.
Okay.
It was a month after Thanksgiving.
Oh, December. Okay.
Yeah. So on January 6th, people started hearing from them again. Tony made some vague claim to a family member that his phone had been stolen or lost at a Starbucks, and that he had just been returned. A neighbor a condo neighbor of theirs texted Megan, letting her know that an eviction notice had been put on the condo. Megan replied, "Okay, thanks." By this point, there was eviction notice on everything. The Celebration house had an eviction notice, and the condo an hour away from the house had an eviction notice on it. Given what was going on, obviously Tony just didn't. He was in a different mental state. He was not paying bills at this point. On January 9th, the FBI is starting to get frantic about their investigation. This is the point at which they're like, this guy's not talking to anyone. He's not coming back. We should probably start doing something. They call the police, the local police in Florida. And the same day, Chrissy also calls the local police. And this is what Chrissy says. This is a quote. My sister-in-law had made a comment that basically, quote, the world is ending on December 28th and nobody has talked to them. Nobody has physically talked to my sister-in-law since the 26th of December, and my brother stopped texting us as of Monday, January 6th. She's making this call on January 9th. So I'll tell you, this statement really threw a monkey wrench for me in this situation because I don't tell my family anything. I keep all the inner workings of my mind a complete secret because I just don't welcome any questions about my life. So for me to say the world is ending on whatever date seems really fucking bizarre. You know, like maybe you have a different relationship. Maybe you're more vocal about the things that you would express to your family. What do you think of that?
Well, okay. I am definitely more vocal and express my feelings to my family, but that's a weird ass thing to say. Who says that?
It's so weird. It's
Doesn't
so
make
weird.
sense. I wouldn't say that to anyone. Like, what are you supposed to do with that as a
Yeah.
receiver of that information? Be like, cool, I'm gonna spend all my money now, or I don't know, or like, great, have you talked to Jesus? Like, what does that even mean? I don't know
So
what that
we
means.
so we
Do you know a
know
meteor? Yeah.
we know that Megan said this to Chrissy, to Tony's sister, because it was on
On
a
a
phone call. It wasn't a text, it was a phone call. And so very peculiar, very, very odd situation. And again, I'm not sure what to make of it, but it does set up some plausible deniability for Tony later on. So that's a good thing for him, I guess. Um, a day later, this is January 10th, the police go to both the condo and the house, and they find nothing. On the 11th, they go back and again find nothing. And then on the 12th, the poor owner of this house they're leasing calls and also asks for a welfare check. This woman sounds like a sweet landlord, actually. Like, here's what she said. This is a direct quote. I own a property that I rent out, and I have concerns for the family. On social media, I've just sort of seen that people have not seen or heard from this family in a long, long time. And I'm trying to sort of notice to evict them because they've not been paying rent. I'm concerned for the family and I'm concerned for my property. I just thought it was me they weren't communicating with because they owed me money. But in general, they've not been in contact with anybody. So she's freaking out. Like, what's going to happen to this like amazing house she has in shitty shit fuck Celebration, Florida? You know, like it's gonna. Are they destroying it or what?
That's good. That's some good sleuthing of her.
Yeah, yeah. At this point, federal agents are basically like, "Fuck this guy. We got to go get him." They call the local police for backup, and by this point, they had seen Tony entering the rental house and not leave. So on the 13th, they go to the house. This time, the door's unlocked, and they just let themselves in. This is all for Medicaid fraud.
Right. Not even like the fact that his family is missing. No one's heard
No,
from them. This is just
none
like a
of
little bit of
it.
money. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, I don't know how the FBI works, obviously, but I imagine you don't put the financial crime people on murder investigations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in my mind, I'm picturing like these guys going in with calculators and pocket protectors to confront this guy for like an incredibly white collar crime, which like just frame that in your mind as well of like who the personality types are that are walking into this house.
And I think it's also that they didn't have like a tremendous sense of urgency, you know, that
Yeah.
they were like, okay, we'll give you the holidays. And then now they're like, all right, it's super annoying you haven't called us, but they're not like, this is a life or death situation. There's like, we need to finally do our jobs. So come to,
Yeah. Their investigation of the in the fraud is less than 2 months old. I mean, these things
Mhm.
drag on for years. Like it's not like a crazy urgent situation.
Yeah.
But here, Taylor, this is where the nightmare fuel really begins. Okay. Do me a favor.
No.
Google Tony Todt. Again,
Okay.
it's Todt, and do arrest after it. So I want you to see the most recent picture of him upon his arrest. Don't say anything. Yeah.
Okay,
You saw it?
I did.
So apparently, pretty shortly before the events of what's going to happen, Tony was in decent shape.
Hmm.
So if you're listening and you're not looking at this picture, I'm going to go ahead and describe him, then Taylor, you can describe him as well. The day he is arrested, he basically looks like Danny DeVito's Penguin from Batman Returns. Like he is again, not fat shaming anyone. He does not look normal fat. He looks like a blob of a human being is how I describe it. And it becomes relevant that he looks like a blob of a human being shortly when I get into the murders. So Taylor, what do you think of his appearance?
Well, he definitely doesn't look good. I mean, and not even like his weight, but he just looks like he looks like a broken, sad human. Like he definitely looks like he's given up. I feel like that's like what I get from like his face. Like his face is like it's expressionless, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean it's not doing him any favors. He's wearing this like white jumpsuit, but like he just he looks like well, he looks real fucking guilty. That's what he looks like. I
He
don't
looks
know.
real fucking bad. He looks like somebody who has probably like been resuscitated after 17 heart attacks. Like he is not in a good way.
No.
And he's not in a good way the day the police get there. Apparently, I'll get into what he took, but police open the door to this house. Or the FBI and the police open the door to this house. They go inside, and Tony comes hobbling down the stairs. Like, again, he's not in a good way. Like, he's not like just bouncing down the stairs, like, what's going on, guys? No, like, he's
Right.
just like half aware of what's going on. I just keep picturing all the lights off in this house for some reason. And then
Yeah.
this guy coming down the stairs, just looking out of sorts with the body type that he had. It had to be surreal. They already knew something was up because they later stated that the second they opened the door, the smell of decomposition hit them, and
Oh no.
it only got worse the deeper they went into the house. They knew there was something going on here. This part, again, don't go into this guy's head. It is fucking terrifying. He told the police that his kids were probably at a friend's house for a sleepover and that his wife was upstairs sleeping. Taylor, he yelled up to his wife,
No.
like police are here, come on down. Again, just it gets worse. It gets so much worse.
I mean,
So
I feel like yeah, I feel like he's when you say the lights were off, I feel like the lights were like always off. Like I
yeah,
feel like he hasn't like he looks like someone who hasn't been in the light, artificial or not, in a very long time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever I didn't put this in this outline, but when I originally was looking up this case, apparently what was doing when the police had showed up was that he had been sitting on the front patio of this celebration house, just like blankly staring into the distance. And then they say that when he got up to go in the house, his body movements were abnormal. Like he was not moving his body in a way that made sense to like just to stand up and walk inside the house. So like again, there's a lot going on in this guy's head in
He
his
kind of
body.
he kind of looks like Vincent D'Onofrio when he's full of aliens in Men in Black.
Yes.
That's what he looks
Yes.
like.
That's so good. Yeah, you
Yeah.
nailed it. Yeah, that's what I
He's
pictured
like
too.
and like I can also picture his fucking neighbor across the street mowing his lawn being like, do I live in celebration.
What a weird fit community meeting that must have been after this happened.
The HOA
Um,
went up. Yeah.
so police go upstairs and they find what you would expect, given the nature of stories that I tell. They find incredibly badly decomposed bodies,
Ew.
except Zoe, the
Who's
4-year-old little girl. They can't find
no,
her
no.
at first. Megan was in bed with the covers pulled over her. This is so bad. They eventually, after some investigation, realize that the puddle that was at Megan's feet was Zoe.
No.
For whatever reason, she decomposed the quickest or whatever. Like, they just didn't know this girl was there. Like, it was just like an amorphous blob at the foot of her
No.
mom's bed. Um,
No. How old is she?
for,
Oh my God, that's like big. It's not like a tiny baby.
yeah.
What how long were they dead?
Oh, we're gonna get to that.
Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna
okay.
get to that.
Okay.
Going back to how Tony looks now and like his abnormal fat distribution and weight, what he did to Zoe is so fucking haunting to me. Like again, this is the stuff that like you just don't want to go super deep into it. He killed her by laying on her.
No.
Can you fucking believe that?
No. Oh my God. You can give your kids away. I just want to say that again. You can just leave them at like the store.
Yeah. Don't take them to the fire station, please.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my
so
God. Poor baby.
so as far as the rest of the family, he at the very least stabbed the two boys and Megan. But an autopsy also revealed a toxic level of Benadryl in their system.
No. Well,
Which,
hopefully
like,
they,
I didn't actually even know you could OD on Benadryl, but I guess you can OD on anything.
of course you can. Yeah, totally.
Well, there you go.
Um, well, hopefully they were asleep. Oh, that's terrible. Were they
Except
sleeping?
for at the very least, except for Zoe. And no, we know that that wasn't the case because one of the boys, Tony later stated that he was really, really nervous about because when he started stabbing him, he was like, "That's the older boy. He might actually be able to overpower me and run out of the house or escape or something." He actually like so they were conscious enough to where he thought that was a legitimate risk.
Ugh.
Yeah. We know all this because he actually confessed to the police 3 times. 3 separate instances he confessed to the police. Ultimately, they deemed this inadmissible, but whatever. We're not a legal procedure show, so he confessed to laying on his little girl until she stopped breathing. That's what happened, as far as I'm concerned. He also killed the dog, Breezy. Not sure why that was necessary, but I guess he was on a roll. Police think the murders happened around Christmas. Taylor, do you remember when I said they were found?
January something?
January 13th.
Ugh.
So think about that. Picture this guy, basically the penguin, rambling around a house for 3 weeks
Oh my God.
with 4 corpses plus his dead dog, eating
What?
Popeye's chicken and just sitting there. Like,
And people are like knocking on the door, right?
yeah, people are asking where I mean, they've done like at this point 3 or 4 welfare checks on him as well.
Oh my God. This is another point from our last episode. I feel like you should look in your neighbor's windows.
Guys, please don't do that.
I'm just gonna say, like, maybe you need to sometimes. Like, just like take a peek, and if things look like weird, then call the police. Like, I
Be a
don't want
little
us,
curious.
yeah, be like a smidge curious. Like, if things seem weird, just like, I don't know, pop in. Maybe like bring some cookies so you can later be like, oh, I was bringing you cookies, but like
Yeah.
not make it weird. But like, I feel like you should look in your neighbor's windows.
Taylor, like this is the part of this story that I think I like dwelled on the most was you're in this house with your dead family rotting above you for weeks.
No,
It's so
no.
crazy to me. To the point where one of the kids is a puddle of sinew. Like it's absolutely unbelievable.
Oh my God, it's awful.
So Tony's side of the story changes after he confessed. It seemed at first, he did the confessing, then later on he said that his wife did it. Then later said that it was some part of some plan he and his wife had to stave off the apocalypse. It's worth noting that nothing I read mentioned religion or spirituality at all with these folks. All we have is what Tony says now and what Megan told Chrissy about the world ending on December 28th, which is
Did
interesting given when investigators think they died.
Wait, did he kill them on December 28th?
They don't know because the bodies were so decomposed. They just
Oh,
assume it was in this window of time around Christmas time.
oh my God.
Yeah. So according to Tony, Megan had baked a pie that had a shitload of Benadryl in it and apparently fed it to the kids. Then they took a bunch of Benadryl. Then she took a bunch of Benadryl herself, and then also he says she stabbed herself in the abdomen. Given her previous statement, yeah, I thought that too. But given the previous statement about how the world is going to end, there's part of this story that I'm like, could this have been a thing? It's there's more evidence around Tony having done all of this than there is about Megan. All we have about Megan is that she was in constant pain because of Lyme disease, and she did make this statement that is verified that the world is going to end on the 28th. That's all we really know.
So like, I don't know, this reminds me of like it would be a lot if he was like secretly convincing her that the world was going to end and she needed to kill her children. I feel like other people would know that she was having that experience.
And nobody said anything. Nobody.
Yeah,
They were like Megan's normal, like to the point where the red flag of all this to Chrissy, Tony's sister, was I talk to these people all the time. Like we have a
right.
great relationship, and now I just
Hmm.
don't hear from them at all. So I don't know. I'm leaving it's not enough for me to say Megan did this,
Hmm.
but it's just another weird component of this.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I don't think she did. I think he did it.
yeah, when you think about like the axe dropping of the fraud investigation with the evictions, and also the fact that at this point it goes probably without saying, but he'd actually exhausted every financial resource he had at that time.
Hmm.
He had nothing left. Like there was nothing left. Like it was over. Like it was all done. And then yeah, ultimately what ended up happening was his trial lasted for only 6 days.
Good.
He was hit with 4 life sentences plus 1 year for killing the dog Breezy. He obviously appealed, and obviously that's not going anywhere. Um, there is a there's a random fact here that I didn't actually put into the storyline because I don't know where to place it. So in the 1980s, Tony's parents were married. They lived together, like they weren't a divorced couple or anything. The dad's name is Robert, and apparently Robert hired what kind of sounds like probably like a slightly mentally disabled person, paid him $800 to kill his wife,
Oh no.
Tony's mom.
Did he do it?
Yeah. So the guy shot her in the face in the kitchen of their home directly in front of a 4-year-old Tony.
Well, I don't think that's random. I think that fucks you up for life.
But like, oh, by the way, she lived. I don't know how she lived, and apparently she like really loved Robert because she was like on his side for the trial, which is incredible. He ended up ultimately going to jail for 5 years, and Tony and him essentially had no relationship after that until now, until this happened with Tony, and now him and Robert are now back pen paling each other and having
Oh,
conversations.
because they're wife killers.
Like what?
Son, you fell so close to the tree. I'm just so jealous that you succeeded in killing your wife.
I don't.
It's not irrelevant. Like, I think that's really a big fucking deal.
But is it relevant in the sense that now, like, there's a common stripe running through this family
Yes,
of, yeah,
that is absolutely unbelievable fucking trauma for a child. Like, can you that ruins your life, clearly.
well,
And
yeah,
I think we can direct thread that.
that would
We'll
happen.
make it red yarn and direct thread that to him killing his family because if you see that, I mean, fuck.
Tony draws that comparison himself as well of this did something to me. I don't know what, but it's just like I have such a hard time excusing like finding reasons to excuse behavior like this. Like it's
No, I mean, don't kill your family. That's number one. That's not an excuse, but I feel like it definitely contributed. And like I also feel like he never went to a therapist.
yeah, yeah. And he never talked about his problems. He never told his wife what he was. I'm totally editorializing this and making an assumption. I would assume that if he didn't think that he was in a position where he had to commit all this fraud to sustain the lifestyle that he and the kids and Megan had become accustomed to, he probably wouldn't have done this. I think that this was a man at the complete end of his rope. He'd given up on life. I mean, that's the part of it. Like again, the picture that you see of him, that is a man who gave up on all of life, all of it.
Well, I mean, this is exactly what a family annihilator does. Like when you see a family annihilator, I think John List, and it's exactly what he did. Is he was like, there's too much debt. I don't know what to do. I have to kill my family. I'm in too
Yeah,
deep, you know?
yeah,
Like I can't take this family out of this nice house. I have to kill them.
yeah. Yeah, it feels like that is a common thread that runs through all of this. But yeah, that is so the reason I picked Mai Tai is because if you don't know this, you can only drink in one place in Disneyland, and it's Club 33. And Club 33 has this like old-timey vibe to it. And you have to be like invited or something to go there. Again, Disney's so fucking stupid. Like
It is like another reason not to go. I'm just gonna
can you
add that to
imagine?
my
You have to be
unbelievable list of reasons
sober.
not to fucking go. Yeah.
You have to be sober while all these kids are screaming and running around. It
And you're
sounds like
standing in
hell on earth.
lines, just in lines, and it's
And you've
humid.
also paid thousands of dollars to do this.
I feel like we did this last week when we yelled about the Turpins going there, but like also it's been really rainy in California, and I saw pictures of people going to Disneyland in the rain.
Ugh.
It's like, what is
Taylor,
wrong with you?
Taylor, if we ever are able to get like advertisers and Disney or Disney Cruise Line decides to advertise on us, we're gonna have to take this episode down.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% going if they're paying for it. I
Okay.
did go one time because I had friends who worked there and they paid for it. Like it was free.
Yeah, I mean, that's worth it, and only
Yeah.
that. But this Club 33, all they have are old-timey drinks. They don't do anything modern, and so it's like
Great.
Sazeracs and Mai Tais and stuff like that.
I
I
love
feel
it
like,
there.
yeah, the vibe inside is very, yeah, it's very you, Taylor. It's very
I
like
love a speakeasy.
flapper retro.
Yeah, I want to open a closet door and be in a bar.
Fuck
Yes,
yeah.
100%. Yes. Put it behind
And
a
so,
bookcase. Oh my God, I would die. That's so fun.
hell yeah. So that's why we're doing Mai Tais today. But that's my story. It's it is really troubling,
It's
but
so
it happened.
sad. It's so sad that people like it's I mean, I feel terrible for the kids and for the wife, and I think all of that, like her doing it stuff is bullshit. I think he
Yeah.
just wants to like, maybe get one less life sentence or whatever, but like that's absolute bullshit. There's no way that she did that. I mean, I feel like he was maybe I'm sure as she was saying shit at the fan that things were not great in their relationship,
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, hey, hon, the FBI is at the door for you." That's the beginning of something bad.
I don't even think it didn't even go that far. I think that was like the barrier that he created with them living in Celebration while he's doing all this in Connecticut.
Oh, right. Ugh.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they
Man.
moved to Celebrate. Maybe that's why they even moved to
Yeah.
Florida, was because he was like, I have to create a physical barrier between, God, what a cluster.
Well, that's terrible. Thanks for sharing.
Next week, I will be sharing an incredibly happy story.
Really?
No,
Oh, because it's like, really?
of course not.
Because next week mine is a love story, and I'm just so sorry that it's not going to be funny, but I just can't, and I have already cried about it. So, it's a love story that didn't work out. So I just can't talk about it. But also, don't stop recording because I feel like we don't have any banter at the end of our show. We need to add banter in.
I will keep recording.
We need like a sign off and something funny to say when we leave. So I feel like, I don't know, like look in your neighbor's windows and
Do you want to do
I
it?
no, we need maybe to think about it more, but I just don't want to like abruptly end it.
Okay.
I don't want to sit here in silence, but we're gonna work on an ending. This is episode 3, but we're not just gonna cut it off anymore. We're gonna add
Is
more
this?
banter. We're gonna be funnier. These are my promises to the world.
I feel like my stories aren't funny though.
Well, you're the one who picked comedy as like our number one thing, so I feel like we should adjust that.
That's a good point. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to next week to learn more about this love story. And I'm going to bring you another horrible, horrible story that will hopefully curl your toes and make you envision horrible things happening to people that probably don't deserve it.
Great. I can't
Yeah.
wait. I can't
Yeah.
wait.
More red flags, more relationships that were doomed to fail. It's all coming up.
Oh, wait. I have one more thing to say while we're still recording. So, Farz, one of my best friends, Nicole, she texted me and she was like, I have to tell you something. And I was like, okay. She was like, so when I looked at your stuff for Doomed to Fail and I saw DTF, I thought about something else. I didn't think Doomed to Fail when I saw that acronym. And I was like, I know, Nicole, that's the joke. And she was like, okay, good, just making sure.
That was intentional. That was
And
absolutely
it was so, I
intentional.
was like, thanks for having my back. And she was like, of course.
That was absolutely intentional. I will also say that Taylor's the one who asked for the DTF logo. Yeah. So it was all you're doing.
So cool.
We'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.
See you next week. Thanks, Farz.